In this video, we will be looking at how we can deploy our static websites to AWS S3 and use CloudFront as a CDN. We will also look at how to automate our deployments as well. And finally, as a bonus, we will look at how we can use Terraform to manage our infrastructure in the long run. I will start by going over to the AWS S3 dashboard. Let's create a new bucket, myapp.com. I will leave everything else as default. Let's create a bucket. So as we can see, our bucket is not yet public. So let's go to our bucket, permissions. Let's edit the bucket settings. I will allow all public access, but leave the ACL settings on. Save changes, confirm. Let's also update our bucket policy. So edit. Here I'll paste a policy that will allow get access to our S3 objects. You can find this policy in the article linked in the description below. So our S3 name would be myapp.com. I'll save the changes. And as you can see, our bucket is now publicly accessible. Let's enable static website hosting now. So I'll go to properties, scroll down, and click edit on static website hosting. Enable. So this would be index.html. Leave everything else as default. Save changes. So now we've enabled static website hosting. And if we scroll down, and from this link, we will be able to access our website. Now that we have everything set up in our S3, let's go to our sample React project and take it from there. So I'll go over to my VS Code. So as you can see on the left, we have a very basic React app that we will be deploying. So first, let's build it. So I'll do yarn build. And if we check out our build folder, we can see we have all our static assets. And now let's sync our build folder with our AWS S3 bucket. So I'll be using AWS CLI to do this. If you're not familiar with AWS CLI, you can check out my earlier video on that. So AWS S3 sync, you want to sync build with S3, myapp.com. Perfect. Now let's go to the AWS console so we can verify the same. Let's open our website endpoint. And as you can see, our website is up. Going back to S3 dashboard. Let's refresh. And we can see we have all our build assets here. Great. Now let's connect our S3 to CloudFront. If you're not familiar with CloudFront, it's basically a CDN offering from AWS which delivers our data like images, videos, and APIs globally based on customers' geolocation at low latency. So let's start by going over to the CloudFront dashboard. I'll create a new distribution. Let's select our region. In the dropdown, I'll select myapp.com. I'll also enable origin access identity. Create a new one. Great. And we will also allow to update the bucket policy. For now, I'll be leaving most of the field as default. You can configure SSL, logging, HTTPS redirection, and much more here. For default root object, I'll say index.html. Let's create it. So now CloudFront should cache and distribute our static assets to all the edge locations. You can also configure behavior, error pages, geographic restrictions, and invalidations, which we'll check out in detail. After a quick refresh, we can see our changes are deployed. So let's open our distribution domain name. And as we can see, we can access our app through CloudFront. Now let's make some changes to our app and redeploy it. so that we can learn more about invalidations. Let's go back to the VS Code and let's make a simple change. Let's change the background color. Let's rebuild. And sync our changes. Okay, so now let's go back to our CloudFront deployment. And if we refresh, we will see the content is still the same. This is expected as our content is cached by CloudFront. So we need to create an invalidation so that CloudFront can expire the cache. Let's go back to CloudFront dashboard. I'll go to invalidations, create invalidation. For now, I'll apply to all the objects, but you can control this as you like. Okay, so it's complete. Now let's go back to our app and refresh. And as we can see, we are serving our new content now. Perfect. Now let's write a simple script so that we can automate this process. I'll go back to the VS Code. Let's revert the color. I'll add a new scripts folder. And create a deploy script. I'll start by declaring some variables. So basically we will have 3 steps: install, build, and deploy. For the install step, we'll just install our dependencies, build our application. For deployment, we'll sync our changes with the S3 and create an invalidation. I'll also add no CLI pager to keep it CLI friendly. Let's make our script executable. And now let's deploy our changes. So the bucket name was myapp.com. And we can get the distribution ID from here. So now we can use this script to deploy our changes from the CI. We can store our bucket name and distribution ID as a secret. Let's quickly check if our invalidation was applied. I'll do a refresh. Perfect. Seems like a deploy script is working fine. As a bonus, let's see how we can recreate our infrastructure using infrastructure as code with Terraform. If you're not familiar with Terraform, you can check out my earlier video on it. So let's do a quick walkthrough. So we create a bucket with a bucket policy as we did in the console. We also have origin access identity, and we also create a AWS CloudFront distribution with our origin and default root object. And finally, we output our distribution ID and website endpoint. So let's apply these changes. And as we can see, we were able to recreate our infrastructure in a matter of seconds. And now we can simply use the deploy script to deploy new changes. I will say that this is totally optional, but this will definitely help us maintain our resources over the long run. I hope this video was helpful. I'll see you in the next one.